There is a moment when you realize the real battle was never outside you. It was not your job, not your past, not the people who disappointed you, not even the circumstances that tried to hold you back. It was your own mind, the voice that made every setback feel permanent, the fear that turned uncertainty into disaster, the anger that gave other people control over your peace, the endless thoughts that kept you trapped in problems long after the moment had passed. Most people spend their lives trying to change everything around them. They chase better conditions, better relationships, more money, more respect, more control. Yet even when they get what they wanted, the same anxiety follows them. The same insecurity returns. The same inner chaos finds a new reason to exist. Because a disturbed mind can turn success into pressure, love into suspicion, silence into rejection, and opportunity into fear. But the opposite is also true. A disciplined mind can turn pain into instruction, rejection into direction, solitude into strength, uncertainty into a place where courage is trained. The world may not become easier. People may not become kinder. Life may still take things from you. But once your thoughts no longer command you, your emotions no longer control you, and fear no longer writes your future, everything begins to change. You stop reacting to every disturbance. You stop needing the world to cooperate before you can feel at peace. You stop living like a prisoner inside your own head. And for the first time, you become the one in command. That is the moment your life changes. Not when the world finally gives you what you want, but when your mind can no longer take away what you already possess, your judgment, your direction, and your inner freedom. More than 2,000 years ago, the Stoics reached a conclusion that still feels almost impossible for most people to accept today. Your life is not shaped primarily by what happens to you. It is shaped by the mind that interprets what happens. Epictetus was born a slave. He owned almost nothing. He lived under the authority of other men. Yet he insisted that no one could truly imprison him unless he surrendered control of his own judgment. According to him, freedom never begins with changing circumstances. It begins with mastering the way we respond to them. Marcus Aurelius faced wars, betrayal, political conflict, disease, and constant uncertainty while carrying the weight of an entire empire. Yet when he wrote his private reflections, he rarely complained about the world. Instead, he returned again and again to one simple reminder: your mind always remains your greatest responsibility. The Stoics never promised a painless life. They never claimed that discipline would eliminate hardship or that wisdom would protect you from disappointment. Instead, they offered something far more powerful. They taught that while you cannot command events, you can command the meaning you assign to them. You cannot stop people from judging you, betraying you, or leaving you. But you can decide whether those events become chains that imprison your spirit or lessons that strengthen your character. This is why Stoicism is not about suppressing emotion or pretending that pain does not exist. It is about refusing to let emotion become your master, because the quality of your life is determined less by the world around you than by the world within you. The moment your inner world becomes ordered, your outer world begins to look different. Not because reality has changed, but because the person looking at reality has changed. And that is where every lasting transformation truly begins. The transformation you are about to discover does not happen overnight. It begins with a single decision. The decision to stop treating your mind as something that happens to you and start treating it as something you can train. Because mastering your mind is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming impossible to control. When your thoughts become disciplined, fear loses its authority. When your emotions become steady, other people's behavior loses its power over you. When your attention becomes intentional, distractions no longer steal your life. Everything outside may continue to change, but something inside becomes unshakable. In this video, we will explore 7 powerful shifts that occur the moment you begin mastering your own mind. Each one builds upon the last. Together, they form a complete path from mental chaos to inner authority. You will learn how to separate yourself from destructive thoughts, respond instead of react, Weaken fear before it controls your choices. Free yourself from the need for approval. Strengthen your attention. Focus only on what you can control. And finally, build an identity that remains stable through every success and every setback. These are not motivational tricks. They are timeless principles that have guided resilient minds for centuries. If you are ready to develop that kind of inner strength, subscribe and continue this journey with us. Now, let's begin with the first and most important shift, the moment you stop believing every thought that enters your mind. 1. Stop believing every thought. Most people never question their own minds. A thought appears, and they immediately accept it as the truth. I'm not good enough. They don't respect me. I always fail. Nothing will ever change. Without realizing it, they hand over control of their lives to the loudest voice inside their heads. But a thought is not a fact. It is only a mental event. The problem begins when you stop observing it and start obeying it. Imagine receiving a short text message from someone you care about. They reply with only 2 words instead of their usual long conversation. Within minutes, your mind starts creating stories. Maybe they are angry. Maybe they are losing interest. Maybe you did something wrong. Hours later, you discover they were simply busy at work. Nothing outside actually caused your suffering. Your interpretation did. This is how the mind quietly steals peace every single day. It fills empty spaces with assumptions, turns uncertainty into certainty, and transforms imagination into reality. Epictetus warned his students about this long before modern psychology existed. He reminded them that people are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the judgments they make about those events. Between every situation and every emotional reaction lies a single decision, the meaning you choose to give it. That decision happens so quickly that most people never notice it. They believe they are reacting to reality, when in fact they are reacting to the story their minds created. Picture dark clouds drifting across a wide blue sky. The sky does not chase the clouds. It does not fight them. It simply allows them to pass. Your mind can work the same way. Thoughts arrive, thoughts leave. You do not have to follow every one of them. The moment you begin watching your thoughts instead of becoming them, something remarkable happens. You create space. Inside that space, wisdom has room to speak. The next time your mind tells you that you are destined to fail, pause before believing it. Ask yourself a simple question. Is this reality, or is this only one possible interpretation? That single question weakens the automatic power of fear. It reminds you that you are the observer, not the voice. Over time, this practice changes your entire relationship with your mind. Negative thoughts still appear. Doubt still visits, fear still knocks on the door, but none of them automatically become your master. Instead of being dragged wherever your thoughts lead, you begin choosing which thoughts deserve your attention. That is the beginning of mental freedom. The person who masters the mind is not the one who never experiences negative thoughts. It is the one who refuses to surrender authority to them. And once your thoughts lose the power to command you, something even deeper begins to change. Your emotions no longer rise and fall with every passing moment. That is where true inner stability begins. 2. Master your emotional reactions. Once you stop believing every thought, you begin noticing something else. Not every emotion deserves an immediate response. Most people live as if every feeling demands action. They become angry, so they argue. They feel rejected, so they withdraw. They become anxious, so they avoid opportunities. Without realizing it, their emotions become the invisible force directing every decision they make. But emotions are powerful servants and dangerous masters. Imagine a manager criticizing your work during a meeting. Before the conversation even ends, your heart begins racing. Your face grows warm. Your mind starts preparing a defense. Every instinct tells you to interrupt, explain yourself, or fight back. Hours later, after the emotions settle, you often realize that your first reaction would have made the situation worse. The criticism may have contained useful advice, or perhaps it was unfair. Either way, reacting emotionally would not have changed the truth. It would only have surrendered your self-control. Marcus Aurelius understood this lesson better than most people ever will. As emperor, he faced betrayal, false accusations, military defeats, political pressure, and endless criticism. Yet throughout his writings, he repeatedly reminded himself that another person's actions belong to them, while his response belongs only to him. That distinction gave him extraordinary strength. He refused to allow someone else's behavior to determine his own character. Imagine standing beside a perfectly calm mountain lake. Strong winds may disturb its surface for a moment, but once the wind passes, the water becomes still again, reflecting everything with remarkable clarity. A disciplined mind works the same way. Emotions may ripple across it. They do not have to define it. The mistake most people make is believing that strength means suppressing emotion. The Stoics never taught that. They taught awareness before reaction. Feel the emotion, recognize it, name it, then decide whether it deserves your energy. This brief pause is where freedom begins. A single deep breath, a few silent seconds, one conscious decision instead of one automatic impulse. These moments appear small, yet they quietly reshape an entire life. The people you admire most are rarely those who never feel anger, fear, disappointment, or frustration. They are the people who refuse to let those emotions make their decisions. That is real discipline. The more often you practice responding instead of reacting, the more stable your inner world becomes. Other people's words lose their ability to provoke you. Unexpected problems lose their power to overwhelm you. Daily frustrations become opportunities to strengthen patience rather than excuses to lose control. Eventually, emotional stability becomes part of your identity. You no longer chase peace because peace begins following you. And once your emotions stop controlling your choices, another invisible force begins losing its grip as well. Fear no longer decides what your future will look like. 3. Stop letting fear predict your future. Even after people learn to question their thoughts and steady their emotions, one obstacle continues to quietly control their lives: fear. Not the fear of real danger, but the fear of imagined outcomes. It whispers that you will fail before you even begin. It convinces you that rejection is inevitable. It tells you to stay where life feels familiar because uncertainty is too risky. Little by little, fear stops being an emotion and becomes a decision maker. The tragedy is that most of what people fear never actually happens. A man dreams of starting his own business but spends years waiting for the perfect time. Someone wants to speak honestly in a relationship but remains silent because they fear conflict. Another person refuses to apply for a better position because they have already imagined being rejected. Years pass. Nothing changes. Not because opportunity disappeared, but because fear quietly replaced action. Seneca understood this pattern centuries ago when he wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. He knew the human mind has a remarkable ability to create disasters long before life ever does. Many of the prisons we live inside were built entirely from predictions that never became true. Imagine walking through a thick morning fog. From a distance, the road ahead seems impossible to see. The uncertainty feels overwhelming. Yet with every step forward, a little more of the path becomes visible. You never need to see the entire journey. You only need enough courage to take the next step. Life works the same way. Fear demands certainty before action. Wisdom chooses action despite uncertainty. That difference changes everything. When fear appears, do not ask, "How can I eliminate this feeling?" Instead, ask a better question. What evidence do I actually have that this outcome will happen? Often, you will discover that fear is offering possibilities, not facts. Then ask one more question. If I were not afraid, what would I do next? Do that one thing. Not everything, just the next step. Courage is rarely dramatic. Most of the time, it looks like making one decision before you feel completely ready. Each time you act despite fear, your confidence grows. Not because fear disappears, but because you prove that fear is no longer your leader. Eventually, your identity begins to change. You stop seeing yourself as someone waiting for confidence. You become someone who creates confidence through action. If that is the person you choose to become, write "I move despite fear" in the comments. A single sentence may seem small, but every lasting transformation begins with one clear decision spoken aloud, because the future does not belong to the people who never feel afraid. It belongs to those who refuse to let fear make their choices. And once fear loses its authority, another chain quietly begins to break. You no longer need other people's approval to decide who you are. 4. Become independent from other people's opinions. One of the clearest signs that you have not yet mastered your mind is how quickly your emotional state changes when someone else's opinion changes. A few words of praise make you feel more valuable. A few words of criticism make you question everything about yourself. Without noticing it, you allow other people to decide how you feel about your own life. The problem is not that people have opinions. The problem is that you begin treating those opinions as if they were facts. The moment you believe another person's judgment has the power to define your worth, you surrender the authority that should always belong to you. Imagine spending hours creating something that genuinely matters to you. You finally share it with confidence. For a brief moment, you feel satisfied because you know you gave your best effort. Then one negative comment appears. Immediately, your attention shifts. Instead of appreciating the work you completed, your mind becomes trapped by a single opinion. Nothing about your work has changed. Only your interpretation has. Yet that interpretation is powerful enough to erase the confidence you felt only moments before. This pattern does not exist only online. It appears in everyday life. People remain silent because they fear criticism. They abandon meaningful goals because someone laughs at their ambitions. They choose careers that earn approval instead of pursuing work that reflects their values. Little by little, they stop asking what they truly want. Instead, they spend their lives trying to satisfy expectations that never belonged to them. Marcus Aurelius lived under constant observation. As emperor, every decision attracted praise from some people and criticism from others. If he had built his identity on public opinion, he would have spent every day chasing approval instead of practicing virtue. That is why he repeatedly reminded himself that the only judgment deserving his deepest respect was the judgment of his own character. Picture a great oak tree standing firmly through every season. Spring covers its branches with fresh leaves, summer brings intense heat, autumn strips everything away. Winter surrounds it with snow and cold. The seasons constantly change, yet the tree never forgets what it is. Its strength comes from its roots, not from the weather surrounding it. Your character must become like that tree. Other people's opinions are nothing more than changing seasons. They arrive, they pass. Your principles should remain rooted no matter what happens around you. This does not mean rejecting every criticism. Wise people listen carefully. They examine feedback honestly. If it contains truth, they improve. If it does not, they let it go without resentment. Either way, they refuse to let another person's opinion determine their inner peace. A simple way to practice this every day is to make one meaningful decision without asking for unnecessary approval. Trust your own judgment. Accept responsibility for the outcome. Repeat this habit consistently. Over time, confidence begins growing from integrity instead of applause. Something remarkable happens when you reach this point. Respect from other people no longer feels like something you must chase. It becomes a natural consequence of living according to your own principles. People are drawn to those who no longer desperately need acceptance. The strongest person in the room is often the one who remains calm even when misunderstood. When your self-worth is no longer controlled by the opinions of others, your mind becomes quieter. And once that noise disappears, your attention naturally returns to the only thing that has always deserved it, your own purpose. 5. Train your attention like a muscle. After you stop depending on other people's opinions, you begin recovering something even more valuable: your attention. Most people believe attention is simply the ability to concentrate. The Stoics understood something much deeper. Attention determines the direction of your life because whatever repeatedly occupies your mind gradually shapes your emotions, your beliefs, your habits, and eventually your character. For that reason, a distracted mind rarely creates a meaningful life. It simply reacts to whatever demands its focus first. Think about how easily this happens. You sit down with the intention of finishing one important task. You tell yourself that you will stay focused until it is complete. A few minutes later, your phone vibrates. You decide to check only one notification. One notification becomes one message. The message becomes a quick visit to social media. A few minutes become 20. When you finally return to your work, your concentration has disappeared. The task now feels heavier than it did before. Nothing dramatic happened. No crisis interrupted your day. No emergency appeared. Yet one of your most valuable resources quietly slipped away without resistance. This experience has become normal for millions of people, not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack ambition, but because they have never learned that attention is something that must be trained deliberately. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire while facing war, political conflict, uncertainty, and constant responsibility. His days were filled with distractions that were far greater than the notifications we carry today. Even so, he continually reminded himself to remain with the duty directly in front of him instead of allowing his mind to wander toward countless unnecessary concerns. He understood a simple truth. A divided mind wastes strength. A focused mind multiplies it. Imagine holding a magnifying glass beneath the sunlight. The sunlight spread across the ground feels warm, but it changes very little. Bring those same rays together into one precise point, and they become powerful enough to create fire. Your attention works in exactly the same way. Scattered attention produces scattered results. Focused attention produces meaningful progress. Many people wait until they feel motivated before they begin concentrating. The Stoics practiced the opposite approach. They chose to concentrate first. Very often, motivation arrived afterward. That small difference changes the way you work, learn, and live. Instead of asking yourself whether you feel inspired, ask a better question. What deserves my complete attention right now? Then commit yourself to only that. Not for the rest of the day, not for the next several hours, simply for the next 20 minutes. Protect those minutes. When distractions appear, notice them without following them. When your mind wanders, gently bring it back. Each return strengthens your ability to remain present. At first, this discipline feels difficult. That is completely natural. Like every muscle in the human body, attention becomes stronger only through repeated practice. Every deliberate return builds another layer of mental strength. Over time, you begin noticing quiet but significant changes. You think more clearly. You complete more of what you begin. Your conversations become deeper because your mind is fully present. Your work becomes more satisfying because your energy is no longer scattered in every direction. Eventually, focus no longer feels like something you force yourself to do. It becomes part of who you are. Other people describe you as disciplined. What they are really seeing is someone who has learned to decide where their attention belongs. And once your attention truly belongs to you again, you become ready for the final and perhaps most important lesson. Real power has never come from controlling the world around you. It has always come from controlling yourself. 6. Control yourself before trying to control life. Many people spend their entire lives fighting battles they were never meant to win. They try to control other people. They try to control every circumstance. They try to control every outcome before it arrives. When life refuses to follow their plans, they become frustrated, anxious, or discouraged. The more tightly they try to hold everything together, the more powerless they begin to feel. The problem is not that life is difficult. The problem is that they are directing their energy toward things that have never belonged to them. Imagine a father who desperately wants his teenage son to make perfect decisions. Every conversation becomes another warning. Every mistake becomes another lesson. Every disagreement turns into another argument. The father believes he is protecting his child. In reality, his constant need to control every choice slowly weakens the relationship between them. The son feels less understood. The father feels less respected. Both suffer because one person is trying to control what ultimately belongs to someone else. Now imagine a leader managing an important project. Instead of trusting the people around him, he insists on checking every detail himself. He questions every decision. He corrects every small mistake. He refuses to let others take responsibility. The result is not greater order, it is greater exhaustion. The team loses confidence. The leader loses peace. Everyone becomes less effective. The Stoics believed that nearly every unnecessary frustration begins with one simple confusion. We fail to separate what belongs to us from what does not. Epictetus placed this distinction at the center of his philosophy. He reminded us that our judgments, choices, intentions, and actions belong to us. The thoughts of other people do not. Their decisions do not. The final outcome of many events does not. The moment we confuse these two categories, we begin expecting life to obey our wishes, and when reality refuses, suffering follows. Picture a ship crossing a violent sea. The captain cannot command the wind. He cannot calm the waves. He cannot remove the storm. Those things are beyond his authority, but he can hold the rudder. He can adjust the sails. He can choose how to respond to every change the sea presents. That choice remains his until the very end. Your life follows the same principle. You cannot control every storm. You can always control the person holding the rudder. Whenever you feel overwhelmed, stop for a moment and ask yourself one honest question. What part of this situation truly belongs to me? Perhaps it is your attitude. Perhaps it is your preparation. Perhaps it is your next decision. Place your energy there. Release everything else. At first, this way of thinking feels uncomfortable because the ego constantly demands certainty. It wants guarantees. It wants complete control. It wants reality to follow its expectations. But maturity begins when you stop demanding authority over things that were never yours to command. A remarkable change follows. You waste less energy resisting reality. You think more clearly under pressure. You solve problems with greater patience. Other people begin trusting your judgment because your decisions are no longer driven by panic or fear. Gradually, your confidence becomes less dependent on success and failure. Instead, it becomes rooted in the quality of your character. You begin measuring yourself by how well you respond, not by how perfectly life unfolds. That kind of freedom cannot be taken away by changing circumstances. If this is the kind of person you are choosing to become, write "I control myself" in the comments. Let those words become more than a sentence. Let them become a quiet promise you make to yourself every single day. Because the moment you stop trying to control life, you finally discover the strength to guide it wisely. And that strength prepares you for the final transformation. The identity of someone whose peace can no longer be controlled by the outside world. 7. Become the person nothing can control. Everything you have learned until this moment leads to one final transformation. You stopped believing every thought that entered your mind. You learned to respond to emotions instead of reacting to them. You stopped allowing fear to predict your future. You became less dependent on other people's opinions. You trained your attention instead of allowing the world to constantly steal it. You learned to focus your energy on what truly belongs to you instead of trying to control everything around you. At first, these may seem like separate practices. In reality, they are all expressions of the same principle. They are all different ways of mastering your own mind. And the moment your mind is no longer controlled by the outside world loses much of its power over you. Imagine two people facing exactly the same difficulty. Both lose an important opportunity. Both hear the same criticism. Both experience the same disappointment. From the outside, their circumstances appear almost identical, yet their lives begin moving in completely different directions. The first person immediately believes every negative thought. He reacts emotionally. He blames circumstances. He searches for approval. His attention becomes trapped by regret and frustration. Little by little, he loses confidence because he believes the world determines how he feels. The second person experiences the same event. He feels the same disappointment. He does not pretend that it is easy, but before reacting, he returns to everything he has practiced. He questions his first thoughts. He allows the emotion to settle. He accepts what cannot be controlled. He directs his attention toward the next meaningful action. Instead of asking why this happened to him, he asks what this moment requires from him. The external event is exactly the same. The inner response is completely different, and that difference changes everything. This is why the Stoics never promised a life without pain. They never claimed that wisdom would remove hardship. What they taught was something far more powerful. When your inner world becomes stable, your outer world loses its ability to dominate you. Difficulties still appear. Criticism still comes. Plans still fail. People still misunderstand you. Life continues to be unpredictable, but your peace is no longer built upon predictable circumstances. It is built upon predictable character. That is the deepest form of strength. It cannot be purchased. It cannot be borrowed. It cannot be given by other people. It must be practiced until it becomes part of who you are, day after day, choice after choice, moment after moment. Eventually, people notice something different about you. Not because you speak louder, not because you try harder to impress them, but because your presence becomes calm, your decisions become steady, your emotions become balanced, your confidence becomes quiet instead of desperate. You no longer need to prove your strength because you are living it. That is what true self-mastery looks like. It is not perfection. It is consistency. It is returning to your principles every time life attempts to pull you away from them. It is remembering again and again that your greatest responsibility has never been controlling the world. It has always been leading yourself. When you reach that point, something extraordinary happens. The circumstances around you may not change overnight. The people around you may not suddenly become different. Your challenges may still remain, but your experience of life changes completely. Because the moment you truly master your mind, everything else begins to change with it. The greatest change in your life will never begin with better circumstances. It will never begin with more money, more recognition, or fewer problems. It begins the moment you stop waiting for the outside world to give you peace and start creating that peace within yourself. That has been the single principle behind everything we explored today. You do not need to believe every thought that enters your mind. You do not need to react to every emotion you feel. You do not need to let fear write your future. You do not need to build your identity on other people's opinions. You do not need to give your attention to everything demanding it, and you do not need to control life before you can live it well. Every one of these practices points toward the same destination, a mind that leads instead of follows, because when your mind becomes steady, your decisions become wiser. When your decisions become wiser, your habits begin to change. When your habits change, your character becomes stronger. And when your character becomes stronger, your life begins changing from the inside out. This is not a transformation that happens in a single day. It happens one thought at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of awareness at a time. That is how lasting change has always been built. If this message helped you see your own mind differently, subscribe and join us for more lessons on Stoic wisdom and practical self-mastery. There is always another step to take, and I would be glad to continue that journey with you. Before you leave, I'd like to hear from you. Which lesson challenged you the most, and which one will you begin practicing today? Remember this: the moment you master your mind, everything changes. Not because the world becomes different, but because you do.